No one was ready. Not the camera crew. Not the audience. Not even the smug-faced host who'd spent the first 20 minutes of the interview trying to flirt his way around real questions. But Chris Rock? Chris knew exactly what he was doing. The segment was supposed to be light. Comedy tour promo, a few jabs at celebrities, maybe a recycled slap joke if the crowd begged for it. What aired instead felt like a slap straight to the face of Donald Trump. Except this time, it was verbal, surgical, and impossible to unhear. Quick question before we go any further. Do you think Melania stayed this long out of loyalty or leverage? Be honest. Was it love or was it survival? Drop your answer in the comments, because if you're still silent, maybe you're just not ready to face the kind of truth that makes people uncomfortable. Chris sat up in his chair, leaned forward just a little, and narrowed his eyes like he was about to drop a secret he'd been chewing on for years. The crowd leaned in. The host cracked a fake smile, sensing something was off. That's when Chris delivered it. "Let's not pretend, all right?" he said, voice calm but loaded with venom. Melania didn't marry Trump. She signed up for a hostage crisis with benefits. Boom. You could hear the laughter trying to push through the shock. A few people in the crowd clapped nervously, like they weren't sure if this was a joke or a therapy session. Chris didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He just stared at the host, who now looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Chris kept going. "You ever see how she looks at him in public? That's not a wife. That's a body double blinking in Morse code." At this point, the producers in the back were scrambling. Some guy in a headset was mouthing, "Cut to commercial," but the host, bless his soul, was frozen. Dead eyes. No backup plan. Just a tight grin stretched over pure panic. Chris tilted his head like he was just warming up. "I got a theory," he said. "Melania has been negotiating her freedom since 2016. You don't go from posing for Louis Vuitton to dodging orange meatballs without writing some escape clauses into the prenup." The room broke. The crowd couldn't hold back anymore. Screams, howls, someone in the front row actually choked on their water. The live feed went haywire. A glitch, then silence. But it was too late. Clips exploded online before the show even hit the next segment. Twitter was in flames. Hashtags were multiplying like a virus. Hashtag Free Melania trended again for the first time in years. News anchors tried to act neutral, but every single one knew they were watching a political grenade go off in real time. Backstage, Trump's camp was already on fire. Phones ringing, texts flying, aides running through the halls like it was DEFCON 1. And somewhere, probably in a tacky gold-plated room at Mar-a-Lago, the man himself was pacing, face redder than ever, ranting about betrayal and lawsuits and how comedians need to be regulated. Chris Rock, he finished his segment, walked out with a smirk, and didn't look back once. This wasn't just a roast. This was an assassination of the Trump fairy tale, and the blade had come from the sharpest mouth in comedy. The crowd hadn't even stopped laughing from the last bit when Chris Rock shifted in his seat and dropped his voice. Not quieter, just slower, like a boxer lowering his gloves, not to retreat, but to throw the punch no one saw coming. You ever notice Melania blinking like she's sending a code? Like, "Help, me." But you Republicans too busy saluting a used car salesman with a spray tan to notice. The host froze. Laughter died midair. You could hear a cough in the back. One woman gasped. The cameraman didn't know whether to zoom in or cut away. Chris grinned, but didn't let up. "I've been around rich people my whole life. I've seen trophy wives, I've seen business wives. But that woman? That's not a wife. That's an employee with a dental plan and a bunker somewhere in Slovenia." He leaned forward now, elbows on knees like he was talking to the front row. "You want to know what that marriage really is? That's a Cold War. Two nations, one mansion, no eye contact." A few giggles crept in again, unsure. Chris didn't care. He was locked in. You know how you can tell she ain't signed up for this anymore? The way she vanishes. Like Batman. Every time Trump opens his mouth, she disappears behind a curtain. Probably got a panic room full of rosaries and burner phones. The host tried to jump in. Something about switching gears, asking about Chris's tour. But Chris waved it off. "Nah, let me finish. This ain't just about Melania. This is about y'all. The voters who watched her go from runway to hostage in real time and still thought, yep, First Lady material. You really let this man turn the White House into a reality show and gave the hostage the supporting actress role. Someone in the audience shouted, "Say it louder!" And the rest burst out laughing, now fully on board. Chris glanced into the camera. "And Donald? I know you watching. You always watching. Between the golf swings and the indictments, you still got time to Google your name. So let me help you out. Your wife hates your guts. Your son looks like he's trapped in a Tim Burton film. And the only wall you built is the emotional one between you and your so-called family." Silence. Then chaos. The crowd roared. Some were stunned. Others clapped like they were in church. The host was blinking like he'd just seen a ghost, reaching for his mug like it held the answers. Someone backstage yelled, "We're live," like that was going to make a difference. But Chris? He stood up, nodded to the crowd like he'd just performed Hamlet, and strolled off stage like it was nothing. The producers were sweating. Phones were blowing up. News tickers ran the clip on loop by the hour mark. Fox News spun it into a comedy gone too far segment. MSNBC called it the moment the dam broke. Twitter had receipts, memes, and replays from 3 angles. The words hostage, employee, and Slovenia were trending by sundown. But the wildest part? Chris never apologized. Not a single word. He posted one thing on his Instagram that night. A photo of him on stage holding a mic, captioned, "When you tell the truth in a room full of liars, it always sounds like an attack." If anyone still believed Melania Trump was living her best life tucked under a crystal chandelier somewhere in Mar-a-Lago, they hadn't been paying attention, or they just enjoyed lying to themselves. Behind the stiff smiles and awkward hand slaps seen on camera, Melania had been quietly carving out her own space. And by space, we don't mean a corner of the mansion. We're talking real legal, physical, and psychological distance. Her life was split, not just emotionally, literally. According to a former staffer who asked not to be named, but had no problem selling screenshots of encrypted chats, Melania had what insiders called the agreement. Not a prenup. That was old news. This was something new. A cold, clinical arrangement drafted after the White House years. Once the cameras left, but the humiliation stayed. It outlined her terms of engagement, a schedule for appearances, an annual review of public obligations, and, get this, a clause about no forced smiles during legal proceedings or mugshot discussions. But the real gem? A private wing. Sealed off. Staff had to knock twice and announce themselves as housekeeping, even if they were bringing her favorite herbal tea. She had her own elevator, her own chef, and yes, her own Wi-Fi router with a VPN that even the Secret Service couldn't crack. She hadn't shared a bed with Trump in years. That wasn't rumor. That was confirmed by the cleaning crew who started referring to the master bedroom as the Orange Crypt because no one entered unless summoned, and whoever did came out smelling like a mixture of tanning spray and cheap rage. Melania spent most of her time with her Slovenian relatives, speaking a language Trump never bothered to learn and surrounding herself with people who didn't treat her like a prop. When she wasn't there, she was in Manhattan, tucked away in a penthouse he technically owned but hadn't stepped foot in since 2016. That space was hers, down to the toothbrush. Trump wasn't even allowed to call the landline, which had been rerouted to voicemail and wiped weekly. What kept her there? 2 things: leverage and a little boy named Barron. And not in that order. Melania had receipts, not just the emotional kind, real ones, papers, copies, recordings. She had once reportedly told a friend, "If I go down, I take the whole tower with me." Floor by floor. Her legal team, separate from Trump's ever-rotating circus of ambulance chasers and tax fraud whisperers, had quietly secured a post-presidency revision to her spousal agreement. It outlined conditions under which she could walk away without penalty, including but not limited to criminal indictments, bankruptcy filings, or public embarrassment involving strippers and wire transfers. So far, she'd ticked all 3. And still she stayed. Not for love. Please. That died somewhere around the 3rd campaign rally where he called her beautiful but doesn't talk much. She stayed because every day he unraveled, her bargaining power grew. The worse he looked, the stronger she got. People thought her silence was weakness. But real silence? Strategic silence? That was power. And Melania had mastered it. She didn't need to clap back on Twitter or stand at podiums holding hands with Joe Scarborough. She just had to not show up. Every time she skipped an indictment hearing, a press conference, or one of those humiliating MAGA dinner fundraisers, it sent a message louder than anything Trump could tweet. Melania had become a ghost, but not the haunted kind. The haunting kind. She didn't flinch when Chris Rock roasted her. She didn't call a press conference. She posted nothing. That silence? That wasn't denial. That was a warning. And somewhere in that over-gilded estate, Trump knew it too. Because the one person in his world who had the power to destroy him without saying a single word wasn't a prosecutor, wasn't a rival, wasn't even a reporter. It was his wife. Hold up, if you're still watching and haven't subscribed yet. What does that say? Maybe you don't want the truth to come out. Maybe you're fine letting Trump spin his little reality show while the rest of us call it like it is. But if you're here because you're done pretending, then hit that subscribe button, like the video, drop a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't just watch the mess. Be the reason it gets exposed. We have a target to hit 50 subscribers before the end of April, and you can make this happen for us. Please subscribe. The second the Chris Rock clip started blowing up online, things inside Mar-a-Lago cracked like a cheap mirror. Trump had been out on the golf course, mid-rant about low ratings on a news segment that didn't even mention him, when an aide ran up waving a phone like it was on fire. He watched the video, stone-faced for a full 10 seconds, then exploded. He didn't just shout, he roared. A clumsy, throaty sound like a busted car horn. The golf club in his hand went flying, nearly decapitating a Secret Service agent who, to his credit, didn't flinch. Trump yanked off his glove, slapped it against his thigh like a bad soap actor, and stormed back toward the clubhouse, muttering things that didn't string together like sentences but felt violent anyway. Melania? Blinken? That bastard. On my wife? He bellowed, red in the face, neck vein pulsing like it had its own pulse. Once inside, the meltdown hit full gear. Staff had been warned for years. When Trump's voice dropped into that scratchy whisper scream, it meant furniture was about to suffer. Sure enough, he kicked over a lamp shaped like an eagle, grabbed a plate of shrimp, and hurled it against the wall. It slid down slowly, leaving a greasy trail behind a portrait of himself that he insisted be rehung in every room. Comedians need licenses, he snapped. Like guns. Or journalists. Hope Hicks, back in the building for what was supposed to be a calm week, whispered something to a nearby aide. Something like start drafting a lawsuit, or a statement, or a fake Melania tweet. I don't care which. Just do it fast. Meanwhile, Trump paced the hallway like a bear in a zoo. Every few steps, he stopped to rant about ratings, betrayal, late-night TV, and how nobody respected him anymore. He wasn't mad because Chris Rock had crossed a line. He was mad because everyone laughed when he did. The clip wasn't just viral. It was on repeat across every media platform. TikTok teens were lip-syncing it. Instagram comedians were remixing it. Even CNN, ran in a segment called Melania Blinked, the marriage that keeps giving. But the most painful part wasn't even the jokes. It was the silence from Melania. No outrage, no rebuttal, no performance of loyalty. She said nothing, posted nothing, showed no sign of defense. Trump felt it like a slap, not from Chris Rock, but from the person who shared his last name. Inside the war room, a space he had converted from a spa into a campaign bunker, Trump surrounded himself with yes men. They huddled around a giant TV like it was a security briefing, replaying the clip again and again. One of the aides suggested putting out a statement saying Chris was a failed comic clinging to relevance. Trump snapped. Failed? He's selling out Madison Square Garden. I'm the one who's not being respected. Me. A silence fell over the room. One aide looked like he might cry. Another fake choked on a cough to cover the awkward pause. Then Trump tried calling Melania. Twice. No answer. He left a voicemail, which, according to someone with way too much access, sounded something like this. This thing's spiraling. I don't know what you're doing or where you're at, but it's a bad look. For me, you need to fix this. If you don't want to post, at least send something. A text, a photo, anything. Don't make me look like some washed-up husband being laughed at on Netflix. Click. No response. Later that night, Trump stood by the window of his gilded suite, watching the lights of the estate flicker outside like a bad memory. He wasn't the alpha anymore. He wasn't feared. He was trending, and not the good kind. Somewhere downstairs, someone played the Chris Rock clip again on a phone. The faint sound of laughter echoed up the marble staircase. Trump closed the curtains, sat on the edge of his bed. For the first time in years, he looked small. The minute Chris Rock segment hit 1 million views, Hollywood sharpened its knives. Not quietly, not with backdoor whispers or polite press statements. No, this was loud, public, petty, and perfect. By noon next day, half of Los Angeles was posting reaction clips with captions like, "He said what we've all been thinking since 2017. The other half, they were meme fighting in comment sections, tagging friends, laughing at Trump's rage spiral like it was a leaked reality show episode. Chrissy Teigen kicked it off first. Of course she did. She tweeted. Melania blinked. That wasn't Morse code. That was "Give me a divorce attorney" in all caps. Under it, thousands of replies poured in. GIFs of Melania dodging Trump's hand. Photos of her fake smiling like she was being held hostage by a department store mannequin. The internet had receipts, and they were serving them like brunch. Then came Sarah Silverman. She didn't post a tweet. She uploaded a 1-minute stand-up clip from that same morning. In it, she said, "You know it's bad when the only woman legally required to be around Trump would rather sleep in a panic room full of Slovenian snacks than next to him." Even Jennifer Lawrence joined in from her self-imposed political retirement. She reposted the video on her Instagram story with 3 laughing emojis and is simple. Chris did what the FBI couldn't. The ripple effect was real. Late-night hosts scrambled to rewrite their monologues. By the time the sun set over Beverly Hills, Jimmy Kimmel opened his show with, "Chris Rock just did more to investigate the Trump marriage than the Mueller report." The crowd went nuts. Meanwhile, Seth Meyers delivered a whole segment called Reading Between the Blinks, where he analyzed every Melania appearance like it was an FBI interrogation. He had graphs. He had zoom-ins. He had conspiracy-level energy, and the audience ate it up. Even the folks who usually kept quiet couldn't resist. Oprah shared an old clip of Melania swatting Trump's hand away, set to Beyoncé's Irreplaceable. No caption, just vibes. But it wasn't just the comedians and celebrities. Agents, producers, and ex-campaign donors started whispering to the press. Whispers that felt more like confessions. She's never lived full-time with him since D.C. She renegotiated the contract after the Stormy Daniels mess. She once told an aide she misses Slovenia because at least the tyrants there know how to shut up. And then, boom, the wildest plot twist yet. Kim Kardashian reposted Chris Rock's clip and added, "Say what you want about Kanye, but at least I didn't marry that." Cue the explosion. Fox News went full meltdown. Tucker's replacement host tried to call it an attack on the American family, which felt rich coming from a network that once aired a segment comparing Joe Biden's ice cream choices to Maoist propaganda. Meanwhile, Hollywood was throwing a digital party. The cast of The View wore shirts that said "Blink Twice, Melania," and toasted with champagne on air. Shonda Rhimes posted a clip of Olivia Pope walking away from an explosion with a caption, "This season of the Trumps is wild." But the most brutal blow came from Robert De Niro. He didn't tweet. He didn't post. He walked into a CNN interview and said, "Chris Rock told the truth. Trump's not just a bad husband. He's a clown in a collapsing circus. And we're all tired of watching the tent burn." Just like that, the dam burst. Hollywood wasn't dancing around Trump anymore. They were marching through his backyard with torches and popcorn. And while Trump's lawyers scrambled to write cease and desists, nobody cared. The Chris Rock moment had turned the entire entertainment machine against him. Again, but this time, it wasn't just jokes. It was mockery with teeth. For 5 straight days, the world waited. Late-night hosts kept replaying the blink. Pundits dissected her silence like it was the Zapruder film. Trump's team, sweating through overpriced suits, begged her for a statement, anything. Even a fake news repost. She gave them nothing. Not a word. Not a sound. Not a single sigh. And then, without warning, at exactly 3:14 a.m. Eastern, Melania logged in. No interview. No tweet storm. No teary-eyed sit-down with Oprah or CNN. She posted one story on Instagram. Black background, white text, centered like a funeral card. Silence is a choice. So is survival. M. No tag. No photo. No hint of Trump. It vanished in 24 hours, but screenshots didn't. By breakfast, the internet was in chaos. TikTok was a mess of reaction clips, dramatic readings, and makeup tutorials inspired by the survivor aesthetic. Instagram flooded with tributes. Twitter did what it does best, screamed, laughed, and turned it into a movement. Hashtag #SoIsSurvival started trending worldwide. Then came the conspiracy theories. She's leaving him. She's writing a memoir. She's hiding out in Switzerland with a burner phone and a Netflix deal. But here's the part that rattled Trump the most. She didn't deny anything. Not the blinks. Not the employee with dental jokes. Not the hostage comparisons, the separate beds, or the bunker rumors. She let all breathe. Her friends, well, the few she kept, started leaking breadcrumbs to the press. One anonymous designer claimed Melania once whispered at a fitting, "I've worn more bulletproof vests than bridal gowns." Another said she had a custom handbag engraved with the word contractual. But it didn't stop there. The story picked up heat when a reporter got hold of flight records showing Melania's private jet had landed in New York the night before her post. Not D.C., not Mar-a-Lago, Manhattan. She wasn't running. She was positioning. A week later, an invitation-only email began circulating among top publishing houses. No attachments, no title, just a subject line, Melania. One voice, unfiltered. The body of the email was 5 words. The story she was never allowed to tell. Bidding wars broke out before lunch. And it wasn't just publishers. Streaming services started circling. Hulu, Netflix, HBO, everyone wanted it. Not the Trump story. Her story. The one with awkward photo ops, fake smiles, and decades of pretending to be something she never wanted to be. His. Trump found out mid-lunch. He was yelling at someone about steak temperature when an aide burst into the room holding an iPad. She's writing a book. He chewed slowly, then snapped the steak knife in half. By evening, his team issued a rushed statement calling Melania's Instagram post a misinterpreted reflection of womanhood and strength and denied any allegations of marital separation, physical relocation, or public distancing, which only made it worse. People hadn't assumed she was separating. Now they knew. Meanwhile, Melania, she stayed silent again. She didn't show up at the next rally, didn't join Trump at court, and when asked about her whereabouts, her longtime stylist simply said, "Mrs. Trump doesn't follow calendars. She follows freedom." 3 days later, she was spotted at the Met Gala alone. Not a red carpet, not a white gown. She wore black. Sleek, minimal, expression blank. Reporters screamed her name. She said nothing, but her eyes? This time, they didn't blink. The fallout hit Trump harder than any indictment, lawsuit, or late-night subpoena ever could. This wasn't politics. This wasn't about stolen documents or tax fraud or trying to rig an election while pretending to care about voter fraud. This was personal. This was humiliation on a loop. For a man whose entire brand was built on dominance, loyalty, and the illusion of control, watching his own wife ghost him in front of the entire planet was a nuclear-grade embarrassment. He couldn't spin it, couldn't sue it, couldn't shout it away at a rally full of confused fans wearing red hats and chewing on conspiracy theories. Melania had become the one thing he could never manage, unpredictable, and that made his image, what was left of it, begin to rot. Fox News, once the palace guard, started hedging. They ran a segment titled, "Is Trump's marriage just optics?" That's like McDonald's asking if burgers are unhealthy. They knew the answer, but the damage was in the question. When the machine that built him starts sniffing around like that, it means they smell blood. Trump's campaign team scrambled. Internally, they tried to pivot the narrative. They floated the idea that Melania was just taking space for spiritual clarity. But the only thing less believable than Trump respects boundaries is Trump meditates. Even his donors started side-eyeing him. At a closed-door fundraiser in Texas, one oil guy reportedly muttered, He can't even keep his wife on script. How's he going to handle China? The MAGA base didn't know what to do. Some doubled down and blamed Melania, calling her ungrateful and disloyal. Others whispered what they'd never dared to say out loud before. Maybe he's just slipping. The alt-right podcast turned into soap operas. Hosts tried to spin the story, claiming Melania was a deep state victim or under mind control. One even said she'd been replaced by a clone named Melania 2.0, Globalist Edition. Nobody believed it, but they clapped anyway. Anything to avoid admitting the emperor was now wearing a wrinkled golf shirt and crying in private. The funniest part? Hollywood didn't even need to attack him anymore. He was unraveling on his own. And the more he tried to look strong, the weaker he got. He went back on stage a week after the meltdown, trying to pretend nothing happened. Waved, smiled, read from a teleprompter like a kid forced to apologize at school. And yet, the crowd wasn't the same. They were distracted, waiting for her. No Melania, no wave, no handhold, no robotic grin at his side. Just Trump, sweating under the lights, pretending not to notice the empty chair next to him. The one that used to hold a symbol of order, even if it was cold, contractual, and half-blinked. He tried to joke about it. Melania's home, watching, maybe laughing, maybe not. Who knows? No one laughed, not even the diehards. That silence said it all. Without her, he didn't look powerful. He looked abandoned. He'd spent years branding himself as the ultimate family man, strong leader, patriarch, head of a perfect, photogenic dynasty. But now, that image was cracked, and the crack wasn't from politics. It was personal, and people felt it. Melania's quiet exit from his stage didn't just expose a failing marriage. It exposed the one thing Trump tried to hide more than anything else. He needed her, not for love, not for comfort, but for the illusion, for the brand. And now that illusion was gone. And just like that, the gold-plated castle cracked from the inside out. No press conference. No scandalous photo leak. No fiery courtroom drama. Just one joke, one blink, one perfectly timed silence, and the mask slid off. Chris Rock didn't take down a man. He yanked the curtain off a performance. And what stood behind it wasn't a leader. It wasn't a king. It was a man holding on to a throne no one respected anymore. A man whose wife didn't even need to raise her voice to knock him flat. That's the part that stings the most. Not that people laughed at Trump, but that she didn't step in to stop it. Not a peep, not a post, not a glance. For a man addicted to control, that silence was louder than impeachment. And now, the illusion is over. The empire is tired. The rallies look smaller. The slogans sound forced. And the biggest flex he ever had, his so-called picture-perfect family, is slipping right out of frame. Melania blinked, then walked away. So the question isn't, will she come back? The question is, what happens when the only person who still made him look human decides she's done playing mannequin? Because if we're being real, the only reason anyone's still propping him up is because they're too scared to admit it's all fallen apart. Now, let's be honest. If you've watched this entire video and still haven't subscribed, maybe it's not just forgetfulness. Maybe it's because you're okay with the lies. Maybe you like watching the circus. Or maybe, just maybe, you're scared of hearing the truth out loud. But if you do care about real stories, raw moments, and calling out the nonsense when it needs to be called, then hit that subscribe button right now. Don't scroll past and act like you didn't feel that shift, like you didn't see the cracks. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. I mean it. Represent your city, your country, your couch. We want to know. And if you got thoughts on this whole mess, say it loud. Don't hold back. Team Melania? Team Comedy Truth Bomb? Let's hear it. And before you go, share this video with someone who still thinks Trump's got it all together. Because after this, you can't unsee it. Next video's already loading, and trust me, the drama isn't slowing down. See you there.